Another interesting thing that you work on or work with are the medical students that come each year, several times a year. How does that work?
We are able to cope with 3 groups of 8 students.
You say cope with, that's
6, well, it's a space issue. It's a space issue at my house, and it's a space issue in the hospital. So over the years, we've worked out that 3 groups of 8 students, each for 6 weeks, can come from Michigan State to Malawi.
But they're not studying malaria specifically.
No, I think that that's too narrow a focus. So they're spread around the hospital doing obstetrics or pediatrics or internal medicine or surgery, and they work side by side with Malawian medical students.
What are they getting out of this? I would think you talked about the mortality of these children. The mortality across the hospital is pretty significant as well, especially compared to American hospitals.
They often have their most abrupt encounter with death at this hospital, because there's not really an intensive care unit the way we think of in the U.S. So in the U.S., if someone deteriorates in a hospital bed, they're rapidly attended to and transferred to the intensive care unit, put on a ventilator, and everything takes place after that. That option doesn't exist. So if someone deteriorates on the ward there, they die, and they die right there in front of everybody. And it's like an unplugged kind of death, an acoustic death. It just happens. And American students, we don't see that in this country anymore. We see all the technology and all the bells and whistles, and a code is called, and people are defibrillated, and none of that happens. And so it's a very direct,
and you've got
up close and
family
personal.
members.
Family members are there.
Right next to you.
And the family members often are in a state of suspended disbelief until you tell them, until you officially pronounce the patient as having died, and then they start this very cathartic wailing, but it's loud. And to see such a immediate, loud display of grief is often, shaking for the MSU students. So they have that. They have this up-close, direct experience with death. At the same time, though, they see lots of patients who are really sick, who would be transferred also to an intensive care unit here, but they're not because there isn't one. And they see those people get better. So they see extremities of the human condition that improve with very simple interventions, which I think is fantastic because it serves to raise their threshold for panic when they get home. And you realize how much you can do with very simple means. Start an IV. Take a blood pressure, give 50% dextrose. You don't need a lot of fancy stuff to address some of the problems that come up. So I think that's good. And the third thing that's great for them is that they become more confident with their physical diagnosis skills. So that seems to be waning here because we can measure and image so much. There, you really rely on your capacity to figure out what's going on with the patient by examining the patient. And people don't come into the hospital till they have to. So they have huge livers, huge spleens, big heart murmurs, whatever. So all kinds of bells sound and whistles for these kids because they're often like, oh, that's what hepatomegaly is. Oh my gosh, that's what a grade 4 murmur sounds like. So it's very rewarding for them.
Is this something that you got into because you had always been fascinated by mosquitoes and malaria and thought, well, I've got to go study this?
No, it wasn't malaria initially that was fascinating to me. It was the understudied nature of these tropical diseases in general. My initial experience was in the Sudan, also with Michigan State, and it was very apparent there that the local clinicians were swamped, coping with this deluge of patients. And they were swamped to the point where they couldn't get enough above the deluge to frame a question to think about a way to slow the torrent of patients that was coming. And it seemed to me that that was a legitimate contribution that a Western physician could make. And I would also be in a position to generate support, research support, to answer those, or to begin to answer those questions. So it was that general inspiration that led me to seek training in tropical medicine, and I serendipitously ended up in Malawi, and Malawi identified malaria as the the disease that they wanted studied.
The patients that you see, we talked about how difficult it is for them to get in and then get treatment. Once they leave, are you able to keep track of them?
We do keep track of, we invite everybody back for 1 month to see how they're doing. And if they seem fine, we send them on their merry way, unless we have a study going on that requires long-term follow-up. And then we arrange a way to stay in touch with them, which often involves driving them home and seeing where they live. Now we have GPS coordinates, and we can sort of track people that way. But before, there would be lengthy narratives of how to get to someone's house, and they're very poetic. Go to the mango tree, turn right, look for the shop that sells bananas, take a left, ask the village headman for so-and-so, and then you get there. So that you can do it, you can sort of do it with the GPS, but in a way, those written descriptions are more fun.
Is what you want to find a cure?
I would like to find a way to yank back from the brink the kids that have progressed to cerebral malaria. There are plenty of people working on treatments for uncomplicated malaria. That's in very good hands. We have great drugs now. We have wonderful drugs in the pipeline. So that I'm not so worried about. What I'd like to figure out is what the heck is going on with these kids who are unconscious and convulsing, and how we can add something to the drug treatment, the antimalarial drug treatment for those kids. What is it? What is the process that's going on that's killing them, and can we intervene in that?
Are you close?
We're closer. We're closer, but we don't have a magic bullet yet.
Well, we'll bring you back another 6 months or so and see how the bullet is coming along in the lab. Dr. Terrie Taylor, we're just about out of time. I want to thank you for being with us today, and thanks to my folks that are watching out there for watching MSU Today in Studio. For more on the show, head to our website. I'll see you next time right here on MSU Today in Studio.